Great. Well, I think we can go ahead and get started, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. If we haven't met before in person, my name is Ben Wilkes. I'm the program manager at TomTom Foundation. I'm joined by Rachel Baker, who many of you know as well, our summit director.
Hey everybody, thank you all so much for being here. Ben is going to mostly facilitate and I'm just going to hang out and jump in occasionally. But I'm really grateful to see you all here. This is great. It's second best to TomTom for sure.
We know everyone's been dealing with a lot of uncertainty in their daily lives and globally, and how we interact with our different fields. So we hope that this can be a moment of inspiration as well as useful takeaways for everyone. Some of the outcomes that we imagine are that this could potentially spark an idea for your work where you live. We also hope to gather some key takeaways and insights from this wonderful group of leaders to share with our network more broadly. So I would remind you that we are recording today. I hope that's okay with everyone. And we look forward to being able to share some of what comes out of this. Lastly, you know, Rachel was talking a little bit about this before, but in order to better serve you and the community that is TomTom now virtually, we'd love any ideas that you have on follow-up programs. You know, there are such a array of areas of expertise here today, which I think is fantastic, but we'd love to have the opportunity to dive deeper into specific areas and to expand, you know, our reach there. So appreciate thoughts that you have here today in that way as well. Few housekeeping things as the last few people are joining us. I think gallery view is the best way to all kind of be here in the same moment together. So if you don't mind clicking that on, that'd be great. Everyone's Zoom savvy by now, but the mute button is our greatest ally. I'd encourage everyone to use the chat function too. If you have links that you'd like to share, feel free to drop them in there for folks, and we can send around that transcript from the chat after this as well to everyone. So great. I think as a point of introduction, I'm just going to paste the list of everyone that's here in the chat. And then if we wouldn't mind maybe just going down that list and, you know, sharing where you're calling from, what you do at your organization, and then maybe a word or two to describe how you're feeling today. So Sue Ellen, I think with the A last name, you're first on the list, if you wouldn't mind getting us started.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sue Ellen Allen. I'm here from sunny, hot Scottsdale. It will be 99 degrees today. And I'm feeling, you know, I'm feeling excited to be here and see all your faces. My organization, I'm the founder of Reinventing Reentry, and that speaks for itself. And I'm just excited to see you. I call this luxury lockdown, by the way, and I'm annoyed with all the people who are going crazy, who have not served time in prison and have no idea what they're talking about, because this is luxury lockdown. We are so blessed.
Thank you, Sue Ellen. Dawn, I think you are next on the list, though you might not have it pulled up. Are you able to go next?
Actually, if I could take a pass right now, because I'm literally driving back to my house from Durham, where we had a drive-by protest at the jail to free folks. So if I can go in about 3 or 4 more people, I'll be in the house with my Zoom camera all set up, if that's okay with everybody.
That's just fine. Thank you. Nora, would you like to go ahead?
Sure. I'm Nora Deem-Leitner. I'm a law professor, and I live in Albemarle County, which is, well, our house is literally a few hundred feet from the city, which I find really interesting because you really need those 2 district attorneys to work together to work with a regional jail that we have around us, and very interesting to kind of watch developments there. So I do, I'm involved in my local community, but I kind of also watch things that happen nationally and really across the world.
I guess I can go next. I'm Chris Fitz. I'm with Advos. We are a recently merged organization of two Lancaster, Pennsylvania-based nonprofits, one doing mediation and the other doing restorative justice. And we do primarily community-referred mediation as well as court-referred restorative justice cases primarily from the juvenile system. And we see probably about 150 to 200 cases a year in juvenile justice. And, and ultimately, the work that we do with those cases is victim and offender conferencing. And, we've also looked into other possible program directions like restorative reentry. Our sort of expertise, as it were, is dialogue work and related to both small and larger groups, and how to make that dialogue constructive and integrating and reconciling. In experts in other areas, I'm really excited to hear from other perspectives on this call. So, oh, and a word about how I'm feeling today. It's a gray Friday. So those two things have kind of dragged me down a little bit on this Friday morning, or noontime now.
So my name is Foley. I am the organizer for the Civil Rights and Racial Justice Program with the Legal Aid Justice Center here in Charlottesville, Virginia. So some of our work that we have been working on before is creating a civilian review board. And we just had a crazy disproportionate minority contact report happen here to talk about the context in the criminal justice system. So we've been organizing around that until COVID-19 happened. So how I feel today, I'm glad it's Friday. That's it.
Jasmine.
Sorry, it's me. Hi, I'm Jasmine Heiss, and I am the campaign director for the In Our Backyards initiative at the Vera Institute of Justice. And what we focus on specifically is small city and rural jail populations. And, you know, prior to coronavirus, one of the things that we were looking at was not only the sort of precipitous rise of incarceration in smaller cities and rural communities, but the quiet jail boom that has come with that outside of big cities. And in this moment, it feels like so much of what we're doing is trying to figure out how to hold the line on some of the decarceration that's happened and to prevent the metastasizing of some of the negative policy consequences of this, including, you know, the massive expansion of electronic monitoring and something that Josh and I talked about a little bit, you know, how quickly people are being coerced into taking pleas to things they might not otherwise. So I am feeling right now a combination of sort of hope about the new potential for decarceration and some concern both about the way in which this virus continues to spread both in prisons and jails and the things that we can't see very well or are still struggling to document that just are the system reconstituting itself.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Chaz Moore. I'm Executive Director and founder of the Austin Justice Coalition. We mainly focus on police reform, criminal legal system reform, you know, just being a good, trying to be a good community resource, and just like basic, I guess, community organizing 101. We live in Austin where we have almost 1 million people, but the Black population is about 8%. So, you know, I do have to say I'm excited to see some melanin on this call because that's not that doesn't always happen in Austin. But I'm also glad to see everybody. We have been currently working on using some of my resources just to put direct resources in the hands of people that are going to get left out of a lot of these relief efforts. Right, Austin just passed this huge RISE fund, but you still have to apply. You still have to, have access to like bank accounts and things of this nature, so they can send you all this type of stuff. So we've been just really trying to fill in those holes. And personally, I'm a Capricorn, so I can do this all day. I can stay in the house all day and just social distance for the rest of my life. But I'm very anxious to get back in the community and be around the community. And like my brother Harold said, I'm also glad it's Friday. I've been working on my skincare routine. I got some face toner and stuff coming in, skin about to be popping. So just really taking this time to grow as an individual and also be there for my community.
So Joanne Page, I'm the president and CEO of the Fortune Society in New York City, and we're neck deep in the middle of the pandemic. We're also neck deep in the middle because we work inside prisons and jails, and we see about 8,000 people walking through our doors a year. And we're working remotely a lot, but we also deliver housing. We deliver about 12 different areas of wraparound services. And we just opened housing for another 35 people. And I feel like we're whitewater rafting, like the water is moving really fast and we're trying not to crash into rocks. And what we're seeing is huge issues around the digital divide, because we're having to communicate with people and we're delivering phones because a lot of our folks have no way of staying in touch. Homelessness is a massive issue. We are an advocacy organization as well as a service organization, and we're part of larger coalitions that have been trying to get vulnerable people released. And we're seeing successes. We just are hearing another 40 people who are 55 or older who are in state prison are getting out in the next couple of days, but most of them are homeless. And half the people coming out of state prison to New York City are being dumped in the city shelters before this happened. And now we're seeing a whole lot of people sleeping on the subways because they're afraid to go to the shelters. So I'm feeling a mixture of adrenaline and exhaustion. Adrenaline because I think we're making a big difference to some people, and exhaustion because we're all working crazy hours and in the midst of a flood.
Hi, this is Stephanie Morales in Portsmouth, Virginia. I'm the Commonwealth's attorney here. And I think I came on a little bit late, but I think I picked up on the prompts. I had to be late because we were actually doing a remote candlelight vigil here to support victims, even though we can't have them with us like we normally do for National Crime Victims' Rights Week. So I'm feeling today I'm fine. We're blessed that we work in a sector where we're not affected like some of our community members who have lost work and who don't have the fortune to be stable and be able to social distance and be able to stagger at work like we do. So I'm feeling fortunate. I'm feeling a little bit touched by the vigil that we just had. And it's good to be among people who are also doing the work. I've been serving as Commonwealth's attorney in Portsmouth for 5 years. And when I first got elected, there wasn't a thing called progressive prosecutors yet. So I've been trying to do this work with a very different approach to decarcerate and work on restorative justice for the past 5 years. And so immediately when this pandemic hit, it became apparent that this was going to shine light on some issues that we already have, that we need to be looking ourselves in the mirror and considering why we have people incarcerated in the first place. So as somebody who's been advocating for compassionate release for years, this was an opportunity to revisit and reapproach the conversations around compassionate release, to reapproach discussion around why people who are nonviolent are incarcerated, and was an opportunity to stand together with our public defenders and not just sit idly by and either not object or submit to the court, but to join in motions and have motions together. So since I believe March, I have been consistently making joint motions with my public defender to get as many people out as we can. I've been signing on to whatever sign-on letters I can sign on to advocate for people at the state level who will listen, and just, have downright just been in the trenches in every way possible, and just trying to stick together with people who we don't, normally get looked at as being advocates with. But to treat our public defenders like family through this process. I was able to have masks on for my office. I also had them made for the public defender's office, so that while we're here working together, everybody is really united. And also just constantly highlighting that people who are incarcerated truly don't have a voice and are relying on all of us who do have a platform and who do have a voice to speak out for them. So it's not a real glamorous thing that I have to say, but it's been, just a labor of love to show that it's not only our responsibility to advocate for victims, but that we owe a service to those who are incarcerated, and that the members of our community who are incarcerated, we serve them too as elected prosecutors, and not just people who we traditionally think of as voters or community members. So thank you guys for all of the work that you do. And I'm very proud to be able to now advocate and revisit some of the issues that need to be corrected. And, just quite frankly, our whole system needs to be transformed. But this has now created a situation where we have the opportunity to really highlight all the things that are wrong on any given day. But we've got to fight, and we've got to work and stay in the trenches to get people out as much as possible.
Okay, I know I'm next on the list, but Dawn? If that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So clearly I've made it back home. I am Dawn Blagrove. I'm an attorney and the executive director of Emancipate NC, formerly known as Carolina Justice Policy Center. We're rebranding. Our organization is dedicated to dismantling mass incarceration and ending structural racism. We do that typically we do that through education in the communities and direct policy making with the people. However, because of this virus, we've had to, like everybody else, shift the way that we do our work. So we are right now, actually, what is taking up the lion's share of our time is litigation that we're involved in with the ACLU and Forward Justice, which is another organization here in North Carolina, as well as disabilities rights and some individual plaintiffs who are suing the state of North Carolina, Governor Cooper, and the director of Department of Public Safety, to get them to release as many people as possible from our prison system. Right now, we are, I think, Noose Correctional is a prison here in North Carolina that has, I think, as of this morning, over 500 cases of COVID inside of the prison. So North Carolina is right now leading the way, actually, I think, in our dereliction of duty to care for incarcerated people here in North Carolina. So that is what we are doing. The lion's share of our work is right now, but we are also advocating and massaging relationships that we have with local sheriffs and local district attorneys to try to help move along or clear out some of our jails and to help get some of those folks, some of those charges that probably never should have been charged in the first place, dismissed, trying to avoid the easiest path for many district attorneys and sheriffs, which would just be to coerce guilty pleas to get people out of jail, trying to figure out, make sure that that's not happening and people aren't feeling as though they have to make a choice between saving their own life and accepting a rushed verdict. So that's what we're working on. How am I feeling today? Right at this very moment, I'm feeling pretty encouraged. The lawsuit that we filed, we have a temporary restraining order, a motion in Superior Court in Wake County that is on for hearing, for oral arguments on Tuesday. So after this call, we will be doing a practice moot session for that. I just came back, like I said earlier, from doing a demonstration at the Durham County Jail where we know that there are at least 6 officers who are infected with COVID right now. They're saying that no incarcerated people or detainees are infected, but we find that hard to believe, and I'm not sure that they're doing any real testing. So we did a protest, a car protest, where we taped signs to our cars, drove around the jail, honked the horn a lot, waved and let the people know, let the incarcerated and the cage folks know that they're not alone and we haven't forgotten them. And I'm feeling encouraged because I took my 16-year-old daughter with me. And as, and Jasmine is laughing because my 16-year-old daughter is with me almost all the time. But as we were driving, she, and we were waving and blowing the horns, you could see the incarcerated people through the small slits in the windows, you know, the small window slits that they give them. And she started crying because she was like, Mommy, they see us and it matters. It matters to them that we're here. So I'm feeling good right at this very moment. So thank you.
Yeah, so good afternoon, everyone. My name is Melba Pearson, and I'm running to be the next state attorney for Miami-Dade County, Florida. How I'm feeling right now, the news just came in that I'm qualified and I will be on the ballot. So I'm feeling real good. But a little bit about me. I am the former deputy director of the ACLU of Florida. Before that, I was a prosecutor here in Miami-Dade County for 16 years. Also past president of the National Black Prosecutors Association and the Black Women Lawyers Association down here. Part of my campaign is a fully progressive campaign with embracing bail reform and ending juvenile justice issues around direct file, more transparency with data and racial outcomes, as well as holding police officers and corrupt elected officials accountable for their actions. In the light of COVID, and I'm sure we're going to deep dive in that a little bit later, basically we've been engaging in a lot of the car protests as well that are going on in Miami. We have guards and staff that have tested positive for the virus in each of the 3 jails. The numbers that are being released about the people incarcerated that are affected by COVID, we think are greatly deflated. So we know the problem is much worse. The incumbent state attorney is moving incrementally to release people as the virus just multiplies and takes people out like crazy. So we've been keeping constant pressure on her and continuing to shine a light on this issue, as well as talking about the inequities that got people incarcerated in the first place, as well as the problems with the cash bail system and how purchasing your freedom is not a reality for people who are of lower income, and that it has no correlation to community safety. So those are the types of things we're working on around the virus. As with every major campaign, we are fully digital right now. So that was an interesting, it was an interesting transition. I was just like, can you help your auntie with the interwebs? Because I don't understand how any of this works. But it's been going really well, and we've been really leveraging the fact that everybody's sitting home and watching videos to make a ton of videos to talk about these issues. So that's the story from me, and I'm really excited to hear what everybody else has to say and hopefully have some other great ideas that we can learn and implement here in Miami. So thanks, y'all.
Hey, I'm Josh Spickler. I'm representing the hometown alma mater with my hat because you don't want to see what's under there. There have been some haircuts given in this house, but I've been giving them, so pardon the hat. And I'm coming from Memphis. I'm out on my front porch because all of the other Zoomable locations in my house were taken this morning. That's kind of par for the course these days with 2 kids in school and a wife who's very busy running one of those schools. But we're doing all right. We could be a whole lot worse. It's a beautiful day here in Memphis. So Chris, hang in there. It was dreary Monday and Tuesday. And I felt a lot like you sounded just then, but maybe things will turn around by the weekend. It's very nice. I don't know what weekends mean anymore, but I'm holding on to them. At Just City, we've been really busy since early March. As soon as we sort of, realized what was coming, doubled down on our bail fund, knew that that was going to be the one area where we could do the most good during this time. Ordinarily, we do a whole lot of expungements, a lot of record clearing. We got more inquiries in the first quarter of 2020 than we've ever gotten in a single quarter before. And then everything shut down. So that project is a little bit on hold. We have a court watch program that we launched last year that was really growing and building steam. Of course, that's on hold. We just found out that jury trials are going to be on hold in Tennessee till at least July, but we will be able to go get a hamburger next weekend, which is fantastic. So those tweets and press releases just write themselves. We've bailed out 73 or 4 people since March 1st. We've raised more than $150,000 locally and nationally to do that. Our jail population, like most of y'all's, has gone down. But like most of you, we are not testing, and we don't believe the numbers that are coming out there. And I'm still very concerned about tragedy. We have been fortunate. One sheriff's deputy passed away this week from the virus, and he worked in one of our detention facilities. But we're really concerned that the numbers do not bear out what's actually happening inside that jail. We're talking to people and hearing awful, awful things about how they're quarantining people, about the insufficient measures they're taking. So just trying to keep our finger on that pulse and try to get as many folks out of there with money as we can, in hopes that when this is all over, we can look back and ask ourselves as a community, why, even in the midst of something like this, did $100 mean someone was risking death? And trying to stay safe ourselves. So I'm really excited to see you all. I really missed our opportunity to get together this year when they postponed Tom Tom. That was one of the worst cancellations of Cancel Fest, which is what we're calling it around our house. So it's great to see you all.
Hi, everyone. Erica Vexilio, and I'm here in Charlottesville, Virginia, and with the Fountain Fund. And right now I'm feeling inspired, really inspired by all of you. Thank you all for the good work you're doing. And I'm feeling motivated to keep doing everything we can do. And it has been, being responsive has meant a lot of changes for us. So we do low interest loans and financial education for formerly incarcerated people. But in the beginning of March, we realized that there were going to be a lot of immediate pressing needs. So we set up an emergency assistance fund, and we've been most busy with that, with helping people with immediate cash payments for rent and groceries are the top 2 things, then utilities and other bills come after that. We also set up a loan payment relief fund so that people's credit wouldn't be impacted if they couldn't make their payments. And in fact, most people can't. So we've been paying their payments, but we just decided by matter of policy, and now that we know that we can defer the payments and not get negative impact to their credit, we'll be doing a 90-day deferral, but also creating a match so that for people who are paying, we will match their payment to hopefully shorten the length of their loan, as well as continue to boost their credit, because when they come out of this, credit is going to be more important than ever. We're also contemplating resilience loans, something different than what we've done before, which would be, 0 interest, very flexible loans to help with just people to stabilize while they're unemployed or furloughed. So we're trying to think about every way that we can wrap our arms around our client partners. That's what we call people who have loans with us, and also involved in several community efforts just to try and make this a more just world during COVID and beyond. I liked the title of the talk, by the way. So it's really inspiring to be with you all. Thank you for your incredible work during really challenging times.
I think I am the last person. My name is Sheba Williams. I am the founder and executive director of a grassroots organization called No Left Turns here in Richmond, Virginia. We're all kind of interconnected. So we do reentry services and pre-entry services to wrap people who have never been impacted by the justice system with people who are coming from incarceration, around kids who have incarcerated parents, kids who are being pushed out of school through detention and expulsion, and kids who are having behavior issues. I work at a diversion program in the state called United Methodist Family Services. And working there really shed light on the disparity and who goes to diversion and who goes to a locked facility, because I also mentor at Richmond's Juvenile Detention Center. So we were working to like educate parents about diversion programs for youth who are Black and brown, who, when you go into the detention centers, you see about 99% Black and brown kids. When I go to work, I see about 90% Caucasian kids, and, you know, all kids, you know, all going through the same challenges, but the information was lacking on one side of the fence. So that was a huge thing to me. So we basically were working on reentry services, making sure that people were stable and had what they need to be successful. We are pushing our advocacy lane, where we take directly impacted people and educate them about how to engage with their legislators and prosecutors year round, how to run for office, because when they get their rights restored, they not only get the right to vote back, they get the right to hold public office, serve on juries, and be a notary public. So we do that work. We're working on initiatives to reinstate parole. We're working on a right to vote campaign, which changes the Constitution and removes the wording that says if you're convicted of a felony, you lose your right to vote, which is a 3-year process. So there's a ton of partners that work on that with us. And we also are working on an expungement bill for people who have been convicted. In Virginia, the only people who are currently eligible for expungement are people who are found not guilty, who have been acquitted. And that is a cumbersome process, because you go to court, you may go to jail or prison, and you stay in there, you pay for your attorney, you pay for bail, and then you have to come out and pay $90 per charge to request the right to go in front of a judge to ask if that be removed from your record, which is absolutely asinine to me. But that's Virginia. I know my sister, Stephanie Morales, who is a fellow Norfolk State alumni, has been one of the very few prosecutors around the state who work in tandem with, you know, what our goals are as a community, and making sure that we're not locking people up for ridiculous reasons. If they can be saved from getting that first felony, which ruins your life forever, then she does it. We had Scott Miles, and he was voted out last year, but there are a lot more prosecutors who are getting involved in the conversation. Legal Aid Justice Center is one of our allies. We had a thing where we figured out that parole and probation were still requesting people come in for in-person visits and participate in ASAP classes and different group classes that were way more than 10 people. So Legal Aid Justice Center wrote a letter requesting that they not do that for public safety reasons. Chaz, you'll be getting one of our stars, Adiola. She is coming to create a public defender's office in Austin at the end of the month. Don't cheer. I'm upset about that. No, she's amazing. She is amazing.
She's my supervisor.
That's my girl. She has been front and center with anything that I need. She is working on an expungement clinic with me in tandem with University of Richmond's actual Innocence Project and Capital One. So COVID-19, when COVID-19 hit, we all had to figure out how to go to virtual no contact, how to do videos and FaceTime for people who were coming home who had well over a decade or more, who didn't know how to use a phone. So that has been a very interesting, sometimes comical thing. And then we realized that Virginia's governor has been, I won't say slow to react, because I think that from one of my friends at Forward USA, he has made the boldest statement on release. He's proposing releasing close to 2,000 people. According to the parole board, they still have to be reviewed, and it still may take months to get people out, but they're pushing to release over 2,000 people, which means that reentry services will be shattered. So we realized that right at this moment, we had to create a program where people who are coming home to permanent homes needed to take 5 to 14 days to be in self-quarantine so that if they go back to their permanent homes, they don't run the risk of infecting their families. So we've been providing hotel stays for people. If they're asymptomatic for 5 days, they go home on the 6th day. And if they show signs of illness in that 5-day period, which is supposed to be the incubation period, we extend the stay for 14 days. And that is been keeping people from worrying about getting their older adults and younger adults or vulnerable populations, health compromised immune system people from getting sick. So that's what we've been doing. We delivered over 120 boxes of food last Monday. We've been still getting people signed up for the services that they need. SNAP, we've been helping people getting signed up for these stimulus payments and different things like that, all over a non-virtual not in-person means. So we've still been kind of doing a lot of work, and that's been going crazy, but we're still actively working on our goals for the Right to Vote campaign, getting an expungement bill, and I can't remember what else we do, but a lot of things. We're getting the people to safety to make sure that the overarching communities and households aren't impacted by this disease because they're coming out of facilities where someone's tested positive. And we're also making sure that they have long-term needs met, because everybody is, all of our advocate partners are saying release, 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 and nobody's thinking long-term about when they're released, there are millions of collateral consequences that affect employment, housing, education, social service programs, and different things like that. So we're just trying to get ahead of that. And I am feeling optimistic. We also have a car rally that starts at 2:00 to push for release at the city jail and the detention center here, where we have 25 cases of infection, which is 1 in 8 kids at Bon Air Detention Center. So they'll be doing a car rally there in about 20 minutes. So yeah, happy.
Well, thank you everyone for sharing. And Sheba, I think that's a great transition. With respect for time, I want to open the floor and just give anyone the opportunity who didn't have a chance to share about how their work has pivoted in the time of the coronavirus. Also, if anyone had any questions emerged at specific people in their work, I would encourage you to ask those now. And then also I would like to know, what resources you might find that you're in need of. If you were to have a direct line to anybody, what would it be and what would you ask for?
Hey, this is Harold. Sabrina, I have a question for you, because we're working here in Charlottesville to get like the last 15 people out. So they won't let them out unless they have a home plan. And so that means they're homeless, so they don't have an address, because the jail here is giving people home electric monitoring, but it's free. They don't have to pay for it. And so one of the things that came up was, what happens when somebody who is in the jail or in prison, who's on medication, and they get out? How do they get that medication? How do they apply for Medicaid, or what do they do? Because we find it, that was the question that we came up with, like kind of smacked us in the face, because you're right. There's other stuff that is not only about release. It's like, how do we help them figure out, even the simple thing is how to get a meal if they do get released to a hotel, how do they get their personal good stuff if they get released to a hotel?
Harold, are you in Virginia? Are you in Charlottesville?
Yeah, I'm in Charlottesville.
So when a person is released from jail or prison, if they are signed up for Medicaid, which a lot of them are while they're in the system, it is up to that facility to change the coding to make sure that their Medicaid doesn't lapse. We often have to remind them because they conveniently forget, and sometimes people have to go back and reapply, but they get Medicaid while they're in the system, and there's a code that has to be changed before they're released to make sure that they go back to straight Medicaid.
I think though, Harold, this is like, that is such an interesting and horrifying question and challenge in so many parts of the country right now, where it is, I think in our work, which is like often a 30,000 foot view, highlights how we are not in a criminal justice system. We're in 3,000 criminal justice systems. And in places where like local foundations and harm reduction folks are stepping up to think about reentry, some of those things are being put in place. And in other places, it's just, I mean, like, huge shout out to the Fortune Society for everything y'all are doing in New York right now, because it is remarkable. And I think additional thoughts about how right now, when we see judges, for example, denying people's release because they say, oh, they'll overdose if they go home. So saying, like, instead, how do we connect people to Narcan? How do we connect people to the treatment and medication they need? How do we connect people to housing? And see that as a responsibility of the system rather than as a reason to just keep people in.
I'm real happy you all brought this up, because I, as someone in the older generation, very much older, I really worry about the people. They're saying, get release, release, release. But if you are ill and sick and a senior and you've been down a long time, what are you going to do? Where are you going to go? There has to be a plan. And it would be really nice if we could have a universal plan. You know, you're dealing with 50 states. In Arizona, our governor refuses to release anyone. And they didn't let anybody have masks at first, and some of the officers brought in masks, and they told them no, they couldn't. Made them put them away. Finally, because of the uproar, they are allowing them to wear masks. They're not all wearing them. The inmates are making masks. They've made over 50,000. The inmates aren't allowed to wear them. So we have a whole different situation here inside, and nobody's getting out.
I think advocacy is so important on this. And, you know, we see a lot of people who've done decades. We have one person who did 50 years, and it's a rough way home in the best of times. And I think having somebody who's done significant time to talk to somebody who's just getting out after doing significant time makes a huge difference, because it's a way of knowing that people can survive it. It's a way of getting guidance about things like how you use a cell phone, and having the advocacy to help people get their meds, get their access to critical issues. You know, we have people who get arrested in the middle of winter or in the middle of summer and get released in flip-flops, you know, in the dead of winter. And I think that the ability to have people who reach out and are there for people, especially who are homeless and in the hotels or in the shelters, just to do advocacy, and especially people who have lived experience, who can offer hope as well.
Joanne, when I was in prison, I looked so forward to the newsletter from Fortune, from you all. I just jumped on it. I was so happy always to receive it. Thank you.
Oh, I'm so glad. I'll let people know that. Thank you.
And you know, Joanne, I agree with you in full, but I think a lot of funders and big money folks hate when I step into rooms and say this, but I think we also have to put into consideration like the cultural landscape, right? Because in Texas, we had some judges doing some good work around letting people out. The governor says, nope, we're not going to do that. It went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and they actually upheld his decision. And while, you know, we are having people from judges, county judges, you know, district judges talk to him and let him know, like, this is the right thing to do. He just won't budge. And then also another thing in Texas, and I'm sure it's in many of everybody else's places, we have the fines going for people that are going outside that shouldn't be outside or don't have masks. You know, and it's up to like 6 months in jail and $1,000 fine. So, you know, in Texas, I think it's kind of a weird place to be in, because you want to be out and you want to help the people, but you also live in Texas to where anything that is progressive or left or Black Lives Matter movement or anything of the people for the people is going to be zeroed in on, right? So it's just like, how do you strategically, and when I say that, I'm not saying, you know, be scared. I think you have to be resilient and, you know, buck the system, but how do you strategically advocate and uplift and do all the amazing things we need to do while understanding where we are, right? And then, you know, just to answer your question from my perspective, being about something that we need, and the reason that we started using our resources, our limited resources to help the community, is like we need access to unrestricted funds, right? Because even with the city fund, it's like all these things what you can and can't do. So if I have, and this is a true story, if I have a mother of 3 kids that needs money for groceries, but you know, some of these funds are telling me that I can't use this money to give it directly to somebody. Like I have to give it to them in form of gift card or whatever. You know, that's kind of problematic because a lot of people don't know how to use those. You know, it's a fee that comes with a lot of gift cards and things of that nature. And somebody that's been in poverty, right? Like I know that $2 that's coming out of fees is a big $2, especially during this time if I'm not working. So, and again, I speak for the whole like bottom right portion of the U.S. We know when it comes to funding, from Texas up to the Carolinas, we don't get any, right? Like we do not get funding. Everything stays on the coast. So, you know, I don't know how philanthropy is responding to these times, particularly in the South. But I know for a fact if you live in Kansas, Louisiana, Texas, the Carolinas, and some parts of Florida, and you're doing advocacy work, it's just like good luck. And you know, like you just gonna make that happen because we're not funding into that because you know historically we know that the South is the hardest place to do almost anything when you talk about moving the needle forward. So just wanted to put that in there.
I've been on a fair number of calls around the country, and what strikes me every time is it's not just the difference between the states, but literally adjacent counties. I mean, with us here, it's like so blatant. We have one of the progressive prosecutors, a former actually head of the defense office in town. The county next to us, my understanding is the prosecutor almost has a chart where he marks off what he calls victories, meaning convictions and jail sentences. And he said if he's the last prosecutor in Virginia, he will not consent to releasing anyone from the local jail. I mean, that's just insane, but I think that is still the reality in so many places. And Jasmine, I think rural counties, it's worse because I think there is legitimately a fear you're leaving people out and there's just nothing for them to do. I just got a study from Virginia where even with the risk assessment, judges will send people to prison from rural counties because they're saying, I don't have any of the things that the risk assessment tells me I should give them if I leave them out. Now, we all agree that this is not a solution, but I think it's a serious problem we need to think about. And I think what we're seeing really right now is the problem from every other system impacting criminal justice. I was thinking about that when I heard about Medicaid. Apparently, our jail superintendents in this state managed to get in the Medicaid expansion bill a provision that allows them basically to have every jail inmate automatically in Medicaid expansion so they get the money, which is brilliant. I mean, it's truly a brilliant strategy for both the jail, but also for the person. But that also means they're going to be covered when they come out, because right now it's a 2-month waiting period in Virginia, not waiting, administrative bureaucracy to get into Medicaid expansion. So it's just insane. And they were just asking the governor to kind of basically make it automatic for people to get in who apply. So I think every system, that coalition building is going to be crucial with people outside criminal justice.
If I could just piggyback on that too, because part of the work, one of the things that I think it's important for all of us to be doing is thinking about the lessons that we learned during this COVID virus, how we apply them to the way that we advocate and educate people moving forward. For my organization, we do a lot of work with bail reform. We do a lot of work, and a lot of that work has been done with law enforcement, getting them to use and employ cite and release instead of actually detaining people. And what we found is that in rural counties, some rural counties, there's a ton of pushback. Some are very progressive. But what we found right now during COVID is that everybody is now, because it's a matter of their personal safety, of law enforcement safety, everybody is trying to use cite and release as much as they can. So, or, you know, we have rural counties where we've seen the jail populations reduce in half in a matter of 2 weeks. And what we need to be mindful of, and what we need to keep track of, I think, as organizers, is that these things can be done. These same people who a month ago were telling us it was impossible to reduce our jail populations, it's impossible to go jail reform, it's impossible none of us would be safe if we don't throw thousands and thousands of people in jail every day. Now, all of a sudden, all of those things are not doable, but are being done in our realities. So what we have to do is hold on to the real progress that we are making as organizers, and hold these folks accountable to say, remember last month when you said you couldn't do this and then we did it? Remember? Let's keep doing it. Just because we have a virus doesn't mean now just because the virus is what was the catalyst for these changes doesn't mean that we shouldn't be able to advocate and push strongly to make sure that these changes stay in place. And I think the other thing that my organization does is educate about the roles and where the power lies in the criminal justice actors, talking about our DAs, talking about our sheriffs, talking about our judges. The importance of district attorneys right now in decarceration and getting these people out and getting people out of prisons and out of jails is so incredibly highlighted. And I think people still are confused about what roles district attorneys play. I think we have to be very, very conscious that when we move forward and when we plan moving forward, that we're making sure we're educating folks about where the power lies, so that they're not fooling around, protesting at the wrong places, asking the wrong people for the wrong things. And I think there are so many teachable moments that are happening right now, but because we're all, neck deep in trying to make sure that people don't die, we can't really collect them. But I think we need to be intentional and deliberate about collecting the teachable moments, collecting the wins, collecting those anecdotal things that are happening from one county to the next, and making sure that we do not lose them as teachable examples and as examples of successes as we move forward and out of this COVID experience.
Dawn, I think you are so right. And, this is not a sprint. This is a marathon. This is going to stay this way maybe another year until there is a way of giving people some protection against this virus. And I think what we're seeing in New York, we have a jail population that hasn't been this low since World War II. And I think for self-protection and selfish reasons, we're going to see that the stuff we've been fighting for is going to happen. And how do we anchor it in this year, let's say, so that it becomes the norm?
I'm really encouraged by all of that, but I've been out for 11 years, and 11 years ago, I just felt like I was a voice in the wilderness. There were voices, but not a lot. And now there are all these voices, but we're still in silos. We're still isolated by our state, our county. And I really applaud you, Ben and Rachel, for getting us together, because it gets us out of those silos. And if we could think of another way to get us out of those silos and get together on more than just a one-time basis, that might be extremely helpful to us to share what you're talking about, Dawn, and the teachable moments, the things we can share, all of those things. But how do we get out of our silos and come together more often?
And also, just to piggyback on Dawn's point, not only should we be collecting the anecdotes and all of that, but we should be collecting that data. Because right now, arrests are down and crime is down. So, you know, again, it is something that is indisputable to refute the narrative that the only way to assure public safety is to put people in cages, right? This is clear that, you know what, you give people a citation and they come back to court, the world didn't end, you know, and that obviously we should be focusing on other metrics other than the things that we've relied on in the past that no longer serve us. And people can't fight with the data. So
and Melba, and I'll say this thing, then I'll be done. I agree with what you just said and what Don said, and I think we also have to re-examine how we treat, you know, quote unquote violent offenders, right? Because the whole cite and release conversation, mainly in Texas, was around well, we don't mind letting out, you know, petty thefts and petty whatever, but it was the violent offenders, and I think we have to understand that first and foremost that those people are still a part of our community. And not every violent offender is a habitual, just like terrible person, right? And I think those people are being left out of the conversation on a very, very important, critical scale. And then Don, just to lift up what you said, and I think Stephanie said it too. To me, this whole virus is nothing more, and I've said this before, it's nothing more than like a light that's really exposing you know, centuries, well, I would say since the inception of this country, like it's exposing how much things just don't work, right? And I agree with you. I've been scratching my head, try to understand is like, how have we released so many people in the span of 2 to 3 weeks when people have been fighting this fight for decades? How is it that we've been talking about basically a living wage for people, and now we got people getting checks out of nowhere, right? Like how is it all these things that we said that was not possible in a matter of literally days, right? Like even right now, they're finna add another, $500 billion, $2 trillion into the stimulus package. So all these things that we've been doing, we just basically been lied to, and we all know we've been lied to about, well, we can't do this. And I always challenge people right now. I hate when people say, I can't wait to go back to normal. And I think if you're a black person, a brown person, a woman, any person that's in the margins, you know that normal has never been your friend. We know that normal has not benefited anybody except like the status quo holding the you know, the 1%, and we can't afford to go back to that. So I agree with you. It's not about how we react to these moments, and like that's one reason I really started getting rooted in the organizing philosophy, because I think a lot of times as activists and just general people, particularly in this country, we react to things. And I think we have to be proactivists. I think we have to be proactive in setting up systems and institutions and things that really enable us to be healthy and whole as a people and as a society. And I think that's proven in the fact that what all of you said earlier, it's great that we're letting people out of jail, but if they don't have access to housing, food, shelter, and all these things, then it's just like, well, really, what's the point? So I'm hoping moving forward that we can really look at, and I think Mark Cuban said it, right? Like, how can we get to America 2.0? We are well overdue for an upgrade, right? If everybody has an iPhone or any smartphone, you know, like we have to go hit that update so we can start running smoothly. And we've never done that in any system in any way. And it's that, to me, that's what coronavirus represents. It's like, it's time for an upgrade. We're exposing how you know, excuse my French, shitty your operating system really is.
Chaz, America is never proactive. We're always reactive. Do you have some ideas that we could take forward that are proactive, specifically in
so
one
I would say to that, as a student of the Black Power movement and Black radical tradition, go back and read everything that's been written and said through oral tradition by Black women. Like they've been saying this literally since the abolitionist movement to get rid of slavery. Like Black women, and I don't say that anecdotally. Like seriously, it's been documented. Right. Yeah, it's been documented. It's a book that I'm thinking about right now that can't come to my head, but I'll look it up while we're on the phone. Black women and indigenous women and brown women have always had the model for what a world could look like, where if people mess up, we hold them accountable, but it's not punitive, where we could all work and belabor, and we don't have to have this kind of capitalistic monster that feeds off people. Like Black women and indigenous women have always had that blueprint. But and you know, I'm really done after this, Ben, because I'm on my soapbox. But you know, as being women and as being Black, we've never listened to those voices. We've never listened to those voices, and I think the only way out of this, I know the only way out of this is if we uplift and really take heed to the voices of Black, brown, and indigenous women. That's the only way out of this, and it's the only way to get to a world where everybody's included. That's the only way.
Well, I think that's a fantastic way to close, you all. It's 2:01, and I want to make sure everyone has the chance to do what the rest they have to do today. Thank you for being here. Let us know what role we can play. And I saw some folks were putting their email addresses in there. Let me know if you need further connection. That's something we're always happy to do. And if you don't mind, I'd love to just get a screenshot of everybody. So if you want to wave or do a boogie or whatever feels right, that'd be amazing.